Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 7th episode of the iDebate server. I'm the moderator tonight, Analytical Atheist. Tonight's topic is evolution a fact? OhManMyBad is arguing in the affirmative, and Socrateswetdream is arguing in the negative. Start off with a 5-minute opening. After each debater has given their opening, they will then have 10 minutes for a rebuttal. We'll have a 20-minute open dialogue, and they can talk to each other with minimal interruptions. 5-minute closings. And after this, we will begin our Q&A. This will last 30 minutes. And after the 30 minutes has expired, the recording will stop. Now on to the rules. The debaters will not be allowed to go over time or they will be muted. Or will be given 15 to 20 seconds of overlap since the debaters will likely be creating it as we go along. Open dialogue as free as possible. We don't want the debaters to be insulting one another during the open dialogue. However, profanity will not be censored as long as it is not used gratuitously. Dialogue becomes incoherent, I will intervene to bring it back to the point at hand. The closing will also not last for more than 5 minutes or the debater will be muted. Of the debate, I will let the debaters know when they have 1 minute left, 30 seconds, 10 seconds left, and if they are still talking after the time expires, they will be muted. The audience is free to use the text chat and talk about the topic amongst themselves. However, they will not be allowed to connect until the Q&A, at which point I will select audience members for questions based on a first-come, first-served basis. As understand and agree to the rules, we can begin. OhManMyBad, since you're arguing in the affirmative, you can go first.
All right, thank you. The theory of evolution by natural selection is the foundation of modern biology and the backbone of every derivative field of study, including genetics, taxonomy, zoology, anthropology, and even medicine. Since its publication in 1859 by Charles Darwin, the model has received an immense amount of scrutiny and criticism, primarily from those who failed to understand it. In this debate, I am tasked with demonstrating that evolution is a fact, and to begin that endeavor, I should probably define what evolution is. The most common tool by anti-evolution science deniers is the fallacy of equivocation, or more succinctly, the deliberately dishonest misdefining of terms, to confuse the debate and ensure that both sides talk past each other. Evolution is, and always has been, common descent of populations with inherited genetic modification, primarily driven by the process of natural selection, wherein some genetic traits will be favored by a given environment, and change in allele frequency, wherein populations of animals will diverge genetically given the right environmental pressures and geographic isolation. Every animal on the planet belongs to a base classification called a species. This generally denotes a group of genetically identical organisms who can interbreed and produce fertile offspring. However, due to the reality of biological evolution, species tend to overlap with one another, creating a massive gradient within the animal kingdom. Evolution operates as a twin-nested hierarchy of life, meaning that all branches can be traced back and connected to every other branch, which are in turn attached to or more accurately derived from one or more basal forms of life. The evidence for this process is overwhelming, so much so that it would be perverse at this point to somehow demonstrate that evolution is false. That's not to say it couldn't happen. Any theory in science must be falsifiable, meaning that there must be some evidence that, should it exist, would prove that evolution is false. Ironically, an example of such evidence is something that anti-evolution science deniers ask for as evidence in favor of evolution. That would be one individual animal of a particular species morphing into or spawning a completely new individual animal of another species. Their favorite examples are things such as a dog producing a non-dog. Not only does evolution not teach that, it doesn't even permit that. If a dog were to ever produce a non-dog, it would violate the biological law of monophyly, which states that while organisms can diverge from parent clades, they will never evolve out of their ancestry. They will only evolve into a modified version of whatever their ancestors were. The best evidence for evolution is genetics. After the discovery of the double helix by Watson and Crick in 1953, an entirely new field of science was born. Prior to this discovery, our only understanding of genetics was the rudimentary demonstration of dominant and recessive traits by Gregor Mendel, who was a contemporary of Charles Darwin. Our genes and the genes of every other living organism show us that we are unequivocally related. The same test that can tell you who your parents are can also tell you who your grandparents are, so on and so forth. The concept is simple. The more genes you have in common with another organism, the closer related you are. The closer related you are, the closer your common ancestor will be. DNA is a time machine, showing us everything we inherited from our ancestors and even how long ago. What we see from genetics, as well as every other field of physical science, is the irrefutable case for common ancestry, and the singular support for biological evolution as a fact of biodiversity and population mechanics. I will go ahead and yield the rest of my time.
Okay. Socrates, you're free to begin your opening.
All right. Thank you guys first for allowing me to come on this web series or whatever you would like to call it and voice my opinion on the matter. Evolution definitely is considered factual among the scientific community, and if you think otherwise, you're considered an imbecile and you are written off, made fun of, discredited, and all around humiliated for your beliefs. I've spoken to a couple scientists personally that have lost their careers in their scientific field as a result of not coinciding with the beliefs that evolutionary theory is taught. The fact of the matter is that evolution as a theory, there are monetary benefits to promoting evolution as a theory if you're a scientist. If you are relying on scientific funding from a scientific community, an organization, and you don't ever discover any facts that could back up evolution, any skeletal remains or any off branches of new species, any new discoveries, you're basically wasting your time. The ability to change research findings in order to skew a certain narrative is completely in a scientist's capability. It is not unheard of. There have been multiple scientists that have been accused of and found guilty of, fraudulent skeletal findings, um, you know, and, just like misrepresenting their findings in the field. The reason why I think it's an issue is not because I think that evolution is false. I mean, I personally do, but I don't think that's much of an issue. The issue is that if you write someone off for as being an idiot or a buffoon or uneducated for not agreeing with it, you're not promoting a healthy scientific community. I feel like all ideas of how this universe came about should be openly, it should be an open forum. It should all be debated. It should all be, discussed. I shouldn't be made fun of for thinking, one way or another. And that's the main reason why I came on to the show today. And that's pretty much all I have to say for my opening statement. Thank you.
Okay. Oh man, my bad. You have 10 minutes for a rebuttal.
Okay, I'm sorry I had to pause for a minute to mute Socrates because of the echo. That was interesting because Socrates did not go the direction I thought he was going to go. You see, the debate is over whether or not evolution is a fact. And at no point in his opening argument did he provide any contention towards the theory of evolution. He just talked about scientific conspiracies and monetary gain, which is totally irrelevant to whether or not evolution is true. If a physicist were to reject the theory of gravity, they too would probably be looked at with scorn and mockery because there are particular models in science that are so overwhelmingly established that to reject them would imply that you have some ultimate knowledge that nobody else does. And if you can't demonstrate that knowledge, then either you're a lunatic or a fraud. And the only people who contend biological evolution today are the people who actually have something to gain. You see, when you agree with the scientific consensus on any matter, you don't get grants, you don't get money, you don't get funding. You have to make a unique discovery in order to get money. So going against the status quo is how scientists make their living, by discovering something that wasn't previously known to everybody else. When Charles Darwin first published the theory of evolution in 1859, everybody disagreed with him. And they called him a lunatic, they called him crazy, they said that he was just a racist, that he was trying to replace religion, all kinds of horrible slander. And even still today, the slander of Darwin persists, because people disagree with what he said, with his model, which, again, they didn't understand. In the world of science, there are the charlatans who profiteer by peddling pseudoscience to the gullible, and there are the real scientists, which generally most people don't even know, because they're not in it for the money, they're in it for the research, and very rarely do they ever become famous. Few examples of that exist. Richard Dawkins, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Lawrence Krauss, Bill Nye. And Bill Nye and Neil deGrasse Tyson aren't even particularly useful in their field. They're more or less science communicators as opposed to actual researchers. So making money as a scientist is nil. It's about as effective as making money as a sanitation worker. Maybe you might get lucky and start up your own business, but the odds are you're going to be making very little. Flip over to creationists, on the other hand, and pretty much all of them make copious amounts of money peddling their nonsense. So the real money, the real financial gain is rejecting the status quo, because people want to feel special and feel like they have a special kind of knowledge, and so they will contend establish science because it is a way to make money. The same thing goes with flat earth, anti-vax, homeopathy. There are plenty of alternative sciences out there that people will pay ridiculous amounts of money to be fed because they want someone who agrees with their nonsense. Ken Ham is currently worth, I think, $4 million by himself. Ray Comfort is probably worth about $1 million. Kirk Cameron is worth about $10 million. And these are famous creationists. Kent Hovind, who spent 10 years in prison for fraud, is also a millionaire because people are still buying the nonsense he's selling. A man who has been disowned by even his own creationist cohorts as a fraud and a liar. So there is no incentive to agree with evolution or with mainstream science other than you want to be an honest person. The evidence for evolution is overwhelming. And let me just get into depth on that for a second, because that's what the debate is really about. It's about the evidence. The primary litmus test for prediction, for evolution and for other theories is their ability to make effective predictions. You see, for example, evolution predicts that features of all living things will fit a hierarchical arrangement of relatedness. For example, arthropods all have chitinous exoskeletons, hemicell, and jointed legs. Insects have all of that plus a head, thorax, abdomen, body plan, and 6 legs. Flies have all of that plus 2 wings and halteres, and calypterate flies have all of that plus a certain style of antenna, wing veins, and sutures on the face and the back. You will never find the distinguishing features of calypterate flies on a non-fly, much less a non-insect or a non-arthropod. It was predicted that humans must have an intermaxillary bone in their head, since other mammals do, and humans are, of course, mammals. The adult human skull consists of bones that have fused together, so you can't tell one way or the other in an adult. An examination of human embryonic development showed that an intermaxillary bone is one of the things that fuses to become your upper jaw. In The Origin of Species, 1859, Darwin said, if it could be proved that any part of the structure of any one species had been formed for the exclusive good of another species, it would annihilate my theory, for such could not have been produced through natural selection. That challenge has not been met. In the ensuing 160 years, no such anatomical structure has been found. 1,000 years ago, just about every remote island on the planet had a species of flightless bird. Evolution explains this by saying that flying creatures are particularly able to establish themselves on remote islands. Some birds, living in a safe place where there are no predators and thus no need to make sudden escapes, will take the opportunity to give up on flying, as it's a rather exhausting form of locomotion. Hence, evolution predicts that each flightless bird species arose on the island that it was found on, and therefore, no 2 islands would have the same species of flightless bird. Now that all the world's islands have been visited, we know that that was correct. The list of predictions goes on, And predictions are the primary litmus test for scientific theories. If it can't predict, then it's not useful. If it can predict, but it's incorrect, it's not accurate. But if it can predict and the predictions come true, then we know the theory must correspond to reality. If evolution were not a fact, then most, if not all, of our predictions would be incorrect, as they wouldn't correspond to reality. Now, my favorite prediction is this. During the late 20th century, creationists and anti-evolution science deniers harped on a solitary piece of data that they believed to be the absolute nail in the coffin for evolution, specifically human evolution and the prediction of a shared ancestor with great apes. You see, humans match the taxonomic criterion for a great ape to a T. We are bipedal primates without a tail. We have downward-facing nostrils, broadened chest, open shoulder joints for full rotation, an appendix, coccyx, spleen, opposable thumbs, and quadridirectional mandible jaw. But one thing that differentiates humans from our great ape cousins, such as chimpanzees, orangutans, gorillas, and bonobos, is our chromosome pairs. Creationists hooped and hawed at the discovery in the 1980s that while other great apes have 24 pairs of chromosomes, humans have only 23 pairs. This was surely damning, as there were only two possible explanations for this discrepancy. Either we did not share an ancestor with great apes, or if evolution were true, which it is, we would have a fused chromosome. And in 2002, we found it. Human chromosome number 2 is fused at the telomeres, which proves unequivocally that an ancestor of humans had 24 pairs of chromosomes, which would mean that an ancestor of humans belonged to the same family as the ancestors of great apes, which would make humans great apes. Evolution is a fact, and every human being on the planet contains proof of that in their second chromosome. Now, I would also like to, before we get into the open dialogue, go ahead and make sure we understand a couple of terms. The first term is scientific theory. A scientific theory is an explanation of an aspect of the natural world that can be repeatedly tested and verified in accordance with the scientific method using accepted protocols of observation, measurement, and evaluation of results. Examples of other scientific theories would be germ cells, atoms, combustion, electromagnetism, plate tectonics, oxygen, and gravity. Oh, also, let's not forget the fact that the sun orbits around the Earth. That would be called geocentrism, but the Earth orbiting around the sun is called heliocentrism. That's also a theory. But theories are predicated upon facts, and so for it to be a theory, it must also first be a fact. That's a requisite. So, another thing we need to discuss is macroevolution versus microevolution. You see that macroevolution and microevolution are not actual distinctions that were made in biology until creationists got on the bullhorn. The only real difference between the two would be time. Macroevolution has been defined as variation at or above the species level, which speciation would count as. And contrary to the position that we have never observed speciation, or the way that creationists would say it is. Say again?
1 minute.
Okay. Well, I'll wrap it up with this. We have, in fact, observed speciation, which would be macroevolution, and the examples of that would be the hawthorn fly, three-spined sticklebacks, cichlid fishes in Lake Nagobago, Tennessee cave salamanders, greenish warbler, Incentina salamanders, Laris gulls, Petroica multicolor Drosophila, Meyer bird fauna, finches, squirrels in the north and south rims of the Grand Canyon, apple maggot, Faroe Island house mouse, Primula quinensis, and the Croatian lizards. Those are examples of evolution. So, next.
Okay. Socrates, when you're ready, you can do your 10-minute rebuttal.
All right, I'm ready. I'd like to apologize for not coming out a little bit harder on my first go around. All right, so evidence against it. Well, the first most primary, well, not the most primary, but my opening statement is the very fundamental key on evolution is that we've all came from nothing, basically, and that amino acids align themselves correctly to create the first cell by itself in the ocean on a dead planet. My issue with that is scientists say that the odds of that happening are 10 to the 45th power. To put that in perspective, the human atoms, the amount of atoms in a human body range to be about 10 to the 7th power. So the odds alone are astronomical, whether or not scientists believe that two cells on two separate occasions formed together and caused two living cells to be together at the same time, or they believed a cell to be split, is still an extreme improbability. Then when you get to the fact that they somehow got on land, all that, whatever. Anyways, next part of my evidence, and this is the one that I'm gonna harp on the most because this is the actual part that evolution is. This is the adaptation of animals, the small adaptation that happens to animals that eventually allow them to evolve. The hippopotamus line of species is where I'd like to harp on the most. And not that not that this is the most damning one. All of them don't really make much sense, but this is the one that I had time to look over and felt like didn't really make sense. It's the first one I looked up, whatever. All right, so hippopotamus started at 55 million years ago. Hasn't changed, hasn't evolved since. Adopted, adapted to the hippopotamus form. It's obviously perfect. Nothing fucks with that. There's no reason to question that. Nothing wants to mess with the hippo. All right. The species before that, that's hippopotamus and the Pakicetus branched off the same animal. That animal was a bull mating animal, basically meaning that the male bull had a herd of animals. The dominant male mated, and he was the one that was allowed to pass on its genes to the offspring. My issue with this is the Pakicetus is about, I don't know, 3 feet tall when its ancestor is 5 feet tall and quite larger than the Pakicetus. The issue is that obviously if the bull, the dominant species, is more likely going to be bigger. It doesn't coincide with the fact that an animal would adapt to be a smaller species. It's just, why wouldn't, and it happens with every fucking animal line. Every animal adapts backwards. It goes the Pakicetus, Umbilicus, and then the Cuchicatus. The Cuchicatus looks like a fucking abomination compared to the Rodhecatus and the Umbilicatus. The only reason they put that fucking thing in is to support their theory that the spinal curve happens at this little weird fucking animal, and then it starts to look like something that would actually be swimming around in the ocean. They don't have. Why would a fish grow legs? The fish are the dumbest species, one of the dumbest species on the planet. They're like fucking even dumber than plants. Even plants know when they're getting eaten. Like you throw a crab and the water starts to boil a little bit more. Those fucking die in it. Fishes are dumb as shit. How would they know to grow legs and go on the fucking earth and get food? And why would an animal slowly start evolving? And how would it know to evolve? Like it's not a thought process. There's no way the fish thought, hey, I need to start growing legs millions of years before it actually needed to grow it, and then it just started sprouting fucking legs. It just doesn't make sense. Why? It just doesn't add up. There's no reason for a fish to go on land. If there's not enough food in the ocean, the fish supplies die off. The fish don't have enough food to eat, they die. And then the food supply comes back, then they repopulate. They don't grow legs and start walking around and looking for new food at other places. It just doesn't add up. We haven't observed anything like it. You can't say something's a fact and never observe anything like it to happen. We never observed a cell create itself. We never observed an animal have a major adaptation. There's boars that are in the wild right now that have horns that grow into their own skulls and eventually kill themselves as a result of it. So to say that, oh, animals evolved to be more superior than what they originally were, why wouldn't an animal think to evolve to not fucking grow horns into its own head and kill itself eventually? Why wouldn't all animals grow to be more smarter, more intellectual? Why isn't a hippo growing thicker skin? Why isn't every animal way more badass than what it is right now? If we are constantly evolving to be more superior than we were before, there would be no backtrack. There'd be no fucking chickens on this planet. Chickens are a descendant of a dinosaur. Why the fuck is there a chicken if it's supposed to be adapting to be more superior than its offspring? There are clear backpedalings to what they claim to be what it is and what it actually is. There's a hand in it. There's something controlling it. There's something killing off species and causing species to come in. and at certain times they don't line up. There's massive deaths of certain species, and then a huge population of them come back. It's not cohesive to the evolutionary theory that they slowly evolve through time. And not to mention, there's a lot of these animals that seem to be a lot more evolutionary superior that are crossbreeds between two different animals that seem like they'd be way more of a superior to, anybody than why did we evolve to have thinner skin but bigger brains and no hair? Why are we hairless? That doesn't make sense. Survival wise, we'd want to have hair. We'd want to have bigger muscles. We'd want to have a thicker skull. And we'd also want to have a bigger head. We'd get a bigger brain and a bigger skull and a bigger fucking skin and more hair. If it's just purely for survival, there's no reason a lot of these animals should be on this planet.
Finish, Socrates. Hello?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Are you finished with your rebuttal?
Yeah, I'm sure I had more evidence to the contrary, but I can't really think of it exactly right now.
Well, we're about to do an open dialogue, so we're just gonna talk to each other now.
Okay, sweet.
Could you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Take yourself off speaker. Because I can hear myself in your mic.
Let me see. How do I do that? Is it this right here?
I can. No, I can't hear myself anymore. Good.
Not good.
Yep. Okay. All right. So, to start out this open dialogue, I want to address a couple of things. First of all, your first contention was about abiogenesis, which is where life originated. Evolution is common descent with inherited genetic modification. It is about what happens to the animals once they're already here. It does not have anything to do with how they got here in the first place. It is still a fact that animals evolve. So that's one thing I wanted to address. Any input?
All right. No.
Okay. The odds of life existing are completely unknown. We do not know all the variables required for the origination of life on Earth.
Evolution.
Do what?
Don't harp on if it's a completely different thing, then don't harp on that. Let's talk about evolution. I want to hear why a male bull based animal would become smaller, even though
so size
more likely going to be larger.
Size is irrelevant, and no, things do not evolve into greater size. If anything, the general trend is they evolve smaller. But there's no set direction for how something's going to evolve.
Not with animals that have the males breed with the females. The bull.
Genetic mutations are random.
Evolution-wise, cows keep on growing bigger.
No, they don't.
Wildebeest keep on growing bigger.
Really?
Hippopotamuses keep on growing bigger. Yes,
No, they don't. That's empirically false. They do not grow bigger. Some of them get bigger. There are some humans that are 7.5 feet tall, while others are not even 4 feet tall. Height, size in an animal is completely irrelevant. That is a very minor mutation, and generally the size of an animal is not particularly beneficial or malignant to that particular animal, because
so like a 3-foot hippo is not going to be any more evolutionary superior than a fucking 6.
It's not about superiority. Evolution has nothing to do about superiority. No, that is empirically false. No, it isn't. You are harping on a straw man. Socrates, you are harping on a straw man.
Why would you evolve to be less superior? That doesn't make any sense.
There is no such thing as superiority in the animal kingdom. There isn't. So, that is a fallacy that you are repeating from creationist websites.
An anteater isn't more superior than an ant?
No.
That doesn't make any sense.
No, it's a predator to an ant. That doesn't make it superior. How many ants are there? Probably 40 billion. How many anteaters? Less than that by far. Ants are far more prolific at reproduction. No. See, you don't have a standard for what makes something superior. Yeah, anteaters are bigger and they're predators to ants, but ants are, they're particularly more effective. They're better builders. They're better reproducers. They're better for the ecosystem in general because they're not parasitic. So, what is your standard of what makes an animal superior? Which of these two animals is superior?
Why would
now, hold on.
evolve to be an ant?
It doesn't. There's no why. There is no why. You're asking the wrong question. The question isn't why, it's how.
On the bottom of the totem pole.
They're not on the bottom. Of what totem pole? What are you talking about? You are erecting these fabricated standards. They're not on the bottom of the food chain.
Yes, they are. How are ants not on the bottom of the food chain?
Okay, name... oh my god, this is ridiculous. Some animals are omnivores, correct? They eat grass and plants.
Yes.
And then carnivores eat the omnivores and herbivores because they need more energy, right? Okay. That's not a level of superiority. All that means is predators versus prey, which is a mechanism of evolution, by the way, and one of the primary driving forces behind natural selection.
Why would an animal evolve to be less superior?
It wouldn't.
Why would
there is no such thing as superiority. You are asking a dumb question. There does not exist superiority in the animal kingdom. There are animals that are suited to their environment, and there are animals that are not. There is a reason why the dinosaurs went extinct. Would you consider a Tyrannosaurus Rex to be superior to everything on Earth right now?
No.
So Tyrannosaurus Rex, a 39-foot tall predator with razor-sharp teeth, like that's not...
It wasn't a predator.
The Tyrannosaurus Rex wasn't a predator?
It was a scavenger.
Okay, source that for one.
Look it up, bud.
The Tyrannosaurus Rex was a predator, dude. What are you talking about?
Scavenger.
Okay, how about this? How about I get... Hold on.
Recent scientific studies show that it was more likely to be a scavenger than it was a predator.
It's official. T-Rex was ferocious predator, not scavenger. Livescience.com. You want the fucking link?
Yeah, send it.
Cool.
Not that I care. But...
Oh, you don't care. So you're going to make a factually incorrect statement to bolster your position. And when I prove it wrong, oh, you don't care. Doesn't matter. See, your entire concept of evolution is so basally wrong. Like, you are suffering from fractal wrongness here. It's not even like you're building a house on sand. You're building it on water, where each brick sinks to the bottom before you can even stack the next brick on top of it.
You have great analogies, bud. That has nothing to do with the argument. Keep on trying.
Yeah, it does, because you are... You had this contention that evolution is supposed to lead animals to be superior, yet you don't even have a standard for what makes an animal superior. What's more superior, a moose or an elephant?
Why would an animal fucking adapt, bud? Why is an animal going to adapt?
It's not a why, it's a how, because of genetic variation and mutation. We see mutations happen all the time. Deleterious mutations are generally immediately eradicated from the gene pool because they are not beneficial and they harm the animal until the animal dies. Beneficial mutations are naturally advantageous, and those, so therefore...
So animals go against mutations that will cause it to be more likely to die, and they go for mutations that will cause it to be more likely to survive.
Yeah,
so
generally.
Why
they don't choose the mutation. The mutations are random. The environment chooses the mutation.
Each other to the death to survive and to mate. Why would an animal that has to fight each other to the death to survive and mate grow smaller? What benefit is that?
Because now it no longer has to fight to the death.
It still did, though.
Size is irrelevant. You are harping on a straw man fallacy. This is irrelevant.
That's not a straw man fallacy.
Okay, do you know that the ancient nymphorids...
The theory of evolution is the continuous adaptation in order for species...
Common descent with inherited genetic modification. That is what evolution is, and that's what happens. You are not a clone of your parents, so therefore you are a common descent with inherited genetic modification.
Dude. It doesn't make sense. You could put all the big words together you want.
It's not. None of those were big words. I think the largest one was 2-3 syllables, maybe. Common descent with inherited genetic modification. If you don't understand those words, then you shouldn't be having this conversation.
Super quick, so I fucking, might as well be one big fucking word.
Do I need to speak slower? Is that your problem? So far, you have not contended evolution. You've erected this straw man of evolution in your head, and you are arguing against that.
I have contended evolution.
No, you are not arguing against what evolution actually is. You have a fake version of it in your head. That is what you are arguing against.
Parts of an animal fall off because it can no longer...
No, that's not how it works.
Yes, it is.
That's not how it works at all.
The bad genes go off. The bad genes go off because it would cause it to die.
No, the bad genes don't go off. The bad genes cause the animal to die, and therefore they're no longer produced.
Yeah.
But those genetic mutations can happen more than once. And they happen in populations, not in individuals. You
Yeah,
seem to have this
so
idea of like
how
one
can we
animal
have
morphing
these
into
two?
another animal.
Yeah, and then all these animals form together while one could stay the same. One hippopotamus stays the same for 55 million years.
Yeah, so do turtles.
They never changed at all.
It doesn't matter.
But all
They didn't need to.
the branching off.
They didn't
Why?
need to. Do you know
Why would they
55
not
million
need
years
to, and
is
the other ones would? Why would they not need to?
because they needed to. Do you not understand how natural selection works?
How would they
Socrates,
need to, bud?
do you not know?
How would they need to, bud?
Socrates, do you not understand how natural selection works? If a particular animal is suited to its environment, it does not have any pressure to change. There's no reason why the hippo needed to change. So any mutation that would have eventually altered its genetic structure generations down the road were not particularly advantageous because the hippo was already fine as it was.
Yes, and there's multiple species that evolved from another species where it declined in its evolution.
No, there's no decline. That's not true. You are using incorrect terms. There is no direction with evolution.
Fucking died off of animals because they got eaten alive because the dodo.
Yes, vast majority of animals that have ever lived on the planet have gone extinct. They've been brutally retired from existence because they were not suited to fit their environment. The amount of animals that fit their environment and pass on is a fraction of what has lived. There have been trillions of species to have lived on this planet. The overwhelming majority do not exist anymore. That is evidence of evolution.
I'm aware of that.
Because that is a blind, unguided process.
A lot of shit died.
Yes, because evolution is a blind, unguided process. It is cold, it is cruel, it is indifferent.
So that's why it's blind and unguided. So that's why a fish would know to grow legs and walk on the
No,
land.
it doesn't know. Holy shit, Socrates. Mutations are not a matter of choice. Mutations are not a matter of choice, and there are fish today that can walk on land.
Why? Dude, yeah, because it fucking makes sense for them.
Why does it make sense for... Oh my god, what the fuck are you talking about? You're not even arguing against evolution anymore.
Yes, I am. I am arguing for adaptation and against evolution. Evolution is a theory that one species adapted so many times that it...
Do you know what a theory means? Do we need to go over that again?
I know what...
You know gravity is a theory, right? Heliocentrism is a theory. Tectonics are a theory. Electromagnetism is a theory. Oxygen is a theory.
I said evolution is a theory. I didn't negate that the fact that because it's a theory means it's not a fact.
That's the debate. Evolution is a fact, right? And all the evidence supports that, which you've already admitted. Your questions are born out of a misunderstanding of how the operation functions. Why is it make sense for a mud skipper to be able to walk around on land, but not for a smallmouth bass or a perch?
That's a good question, bud. I'm not telling you.
It doesn't. There's no reason why the mud skippers evolved the ability to get around, walk on land, and breathe pure oxygen. Okay, why does it make sense? Hold on. Why does it make sense for mammals to live in the water when they can't breathe underwater? Whales and dolphins and seals and such are all mammals. Why do they live in the water?
It doesn't, because they didn't evolve.
No, because they did evolve, and they have anatomical structures to allow them to do that.
That's the thing, bud. It doesn't make sense.
Okay, if they didn't evolve, if they didn't evolve, why do manatees have fingernails and elbows?
I have no fucking clue, bud. That's a good
Because
point.
they evolved. Those are vestigial remnants of their past structures.
If you're following evolution, it really wouldn't make sense for a whale to be there. But it didn't evolve. It was created.
No, it wasn't fucking... Oh, it was created. That's why they have a pelvis that they can't use?
Yep.
Well, that's retarded.
Why would it,
Here's the thing.
Why would it evolve to have a pelvis it can't use?
Because it had a pelvis before it became a whale. Early Pakicetus was a tetrapod. It was a four-legged animal that walked on land. That's why it needed a fucking pelvis.
While it was evolving everything else?
Oh my god, you don't understand how it works. It is a matter of population genetics. Socrates, you are arguing as though evolution is one individual fucking animal anamorphing into another animal. That's not how it works.
No, I'm not.
Every argument you have erected thus far has been exactly that.
No, it has not.
You don't understand population mechanics at all, do you?
Why would a species of animal...
You keep asking the question why. I've explained to you why the question why is stupid. It's not why, it's how. There is no reason. There's no intelligence or intention behind evolution.
No, why, it's how. Okay, how'd it happen, bud? How'd it happen?
Duplication events, genetic variation, and mutation. That's how it happened.
Okay, what is that?
Okay, so when particular sets of genes get duplicated and segments of the genes get replaced, you get particular attributes that can be either deleterious or beneficial to the animal. For example, in dogs, the little tiny stubby legs and arms of a dachshund don't make it a particularly effective hunter, but it is a very good digger, which means it can go after burrowing animals. And because those tiny little stubby legs make it a better digger than, say, a Belgian Malinois or a German Shepherd, which would be better attack dogs, people started breeding that genetic characteristic into other dogs, which is how we got things like the Corgi and the Basset Hound, right? But those particular genetic traits weren't...
You can't use a dog. You can't use
I can't use the greatest example of evolution that we have to just demonstrate how evolution works.
Evolution, that's adaptation. That dog didn't turn into a whale.
Is that what you're trying to tell me right now?
Type of dog, bud.
Do you ever think if you didn't know what a dog was that you would look at a Chihuahua and a Doberman and think they were the same species of animal? Is
They are though.
that a yes, no?
They are though.
Hello?
They are an adapted species. They are not an evolved species.
Okay, do you not know what adaptation is? That's like saying no. That's like holy shit. Adaptation is a mechanism of evolution. That is what evolution is. Adaptation.
Yes, I know that. I know that's the theory.
Any animal that has adapted to its environment has evolved. Evolution literally means change over time. So if you adapt, you change. And that is a mechanism of evolution.
No, a dog can turn into a different type of dog. It can't turn into a whale. Adaptation.
Motherfucker! Law of monophyly. Law of monophyly. At no point in any evolutionary textbook or teaching will you ever find where one particular animal can morph into another kind of animal that does not belong to its ancestry. That is asinine and bewilderingly inane. No, you're absolutely right. A dog can't turn into a fucking whale because a whale is not a carnivore, nor is it a canine. Are dogs wolves? Let me ask you that. Are dogs wolves?
They're an off branch of wolves, yeah.
So you acknowledge that evolution happens.
They belong to the same species.
Because a Pekingese came from a wolf, right?
No, it was adaptation.
Really? So what is the benefit of being a Pekingese with your tiny stubbed little face without being able to breathe?
Pekingese wouldn't survive in the wild, would it, bud?
No, it wouldn't, because we artificially bred that, which is why it wouldn't survive in the wild.
Use dogs because they don't make sense.
German Shepherds would do just fine, though.
This isn't about what we created. It's about what nature created.
Right, and nature doesn't create things like the Pekingese. So the fact that we brought the Pekingese into existence, using the mechanisms of nature proves evolution happens.
Creates things like the dodo, but it doesn't create things like the Pekingese.
And the dodo survived for 45 million years before it went extinct because it took that long for the environment to shift to where it was no longer sustainable for the dodo bird. Same thing with the dinosaurs. There were 4 or 5 different extinction-leveled events in the last 700 million years that wiped out the vast majority of life. And yeah, while the dinosaurs went kaput in the Permian-Triassic extinction and the Jurassic extinction, smaller animals, and you were talking about size a minute ago, smaller animals that didn't have to breathe or eat as much as larger animals survived because even though the atmosphere was basically a cloud of dust after the asteroid hit, that was not a problem for tiny animals that didn't need to breathe as much oxygen.
And that's where it makes
they didn't have as much blood in their bodies circulating through that needed to be oxygenated. So their tiny size gave them an advantage over the giant predators that you seem to think are superior. Because evolution is blind and unguided. And a particular advantage that you might possess won't be realized until your environment favors it. The long and short-beaked finches on the Galapagos Islands existed together for thousands of years until the food shortage happened, and now only the long-beaked finches had the advantage to find the food and get the food, where the short-beaked finches didn't have that advantage and they died off. And so now, there no longer exist short-beaked finches on the Galapagos Islands.
Yeah, it's pretty cool that they evolved for the future. They were expecting their environment. So they evolved ahead of time. Pretty cool.
No, they didn't. The mutation was completely and totally random. The fucking finches had no clue what was happening to their genetic codes. You don't know what's happening to your genetic code whenever it happens.
In a billion years, I'm going to be a unicorn.
Do what?
I said in a billion years, I'm going to be a unicorn.
Maybe you will be. Who knows?
Yep.
Whatever that unicorn will be, it will also be a human because it's your ancestor. It'll be a hominid, it'll be a hominoidea, a hominini, a simiform, a catarrhini, it'll be a primate, it'll be a mammalia, it'll be a reptiliiform, it'll be a gnathostome, it'll be a therapsid, it'll be a cephalconodont, it'll be everything that your ancestors were, because you cannot evolve out of your ancestry. And that's what you think evolution is. One particular genus of animal or species of animal morphing into another animal that belongs to a completely different clade. That will never happen.
That's not
Dogs, cats, and bears are all
Dude,
carnivores.
Hey, bud, guess what? I paid attention in my middle school science class. That's not what I think evolution is.
You literally just quoted that a minute ago, that a dog can't turn into a whale. Not if that ever happened, it would disprove evolution unequivocally. That would outright violate the law of monophyly.
Oh my god, don't fucking hold it to me. It was just a saying.
It's every time I demonstrate what something that you've said is empirically false, you backtrack. This is hilarious.
Does that help you out? Does that help you out? A hippo can't turn into a whale. Does that make you happier?
Yeah, a hippo can't turn into a whale. You're absolutely right.
And
that would also violate the law of monophyly.
No, they're from the same family. They're from the same family. Hippos and whales are from the same family, according to theory of evolution.
No. Hippos and whales share a common ancestor called Pakicetus. They're not from the same family. That would require they had an immediate common ancestor, which they do not.
That's basically
yes. Every animal on the planet shares a common ancestor.
Ancestor with you, bud. Then we're part of the same family.
We're both humans, right? We're both hominoids. We have that in common.
Yes.
So there was a population of animals at some point that we share in common. That's how common ancestry works. And yes, hippos and whales share a common ancestor, but that common ancestor is not immediate. They are not a prophylactic group.
Yeah, that's my point. So.
Okay, that's fine. We can give it a rest there and let people start asking questions.
Okay. Guys, if you want to ask a question, you can put a 1 in the chat. It's first come, first serve, and Nash got his 1 in there, so I'll go ahead and unmute him.
Hello?
What up?
I got a question for Socrates.
Yes, sir.
How do you explain the vestigial parts of animals, such as the arms of an emu, if not by evolutionary selection? Evolutionary natural selection.
The creator decided that he would like to have an arm.
Yeah, but emus don't have muscles in their arms. They can't move them.
I'm not trying to defend the fact that emus have arms, but I'm just saying that I don't agree with the theory of evolution. I think the creator put those arms that it didn't necessarily need. Next question.
I think SS was next. SS, do not troll. Ask a serious question. SS, you're up, buddy.
Hello? All right.
Yep.
So, all right. So, just give me an explanation. So,
who's your question for?
Did humanoid to OhMan?
Okay.
Did humanoids cream pie monkeys, or how was it? Like Tarzan clapped monkey cheeks, or
All right, Dan's up next.
Yeah. My question is for Socrates.
Yes,
so what evidence do you have for creation?
I feel like the evidence for creationism is all around us. I feel that the lack of evidence for evolution, the evidence for creation.
That doesn't even compute logically.
Yeah, right. That's not my question.
Anybody else have a question?
Slippery has one.
All right, Slippery. Hop in here, buddy.
I don't have a question.
Oh, okay.
I was just putting it for in chat.
Anybody else have a question or another question? All right, Nash. Hop on, buddy.
I'll do this next question on Omen.
Go ahead.
there are some things in evolution that appear to be irreducibly complex, such as the that fucking tail that some bacteria have. I can't flagella.
Yeah, the flagellum, bacteria flagellum.
Yeah. How does evolution explain the flagellum, as it seems to be for the express purpose of locomotion, but doesn't appear to take evolutionary steps?
The bacteria flagellum was actually one of the things that was brought up in the Kitzmiller versus Dover trial back in 2001. It was brought up by Michael Behe, who said that it was a component that was irreducibly complex, and as according to Charles Darwin and Origin of Species, such a structure should disprove evolution. However, we know that the bacteria flagellum, while it does exist as sort of a motor now, didn't always exist that way, and we see remnants of that in bikaryotic cells. So it used to be sort of a filter as opposed to a motor. You see, the example that Michael Behe gave was similar to a mousetrap, where if you take away a component of a mousetrap, it then stops being a mousetrap and no longer works. But if you take away a component from a mousetrap, it could serve another function, such as a tie clip. So with bacteria flagellum specifically, we know how it evolved. We've actually traced that, and I can link a couple of different scholarly sources on the evolution of the black bacteria flagellum. So this is from a journal on genetics. You can look at that. What's important to realize is that in order for it to be irreducibly complex, it can't have any other function. But at no point in all of taxonomy, zoology, anthropology, biology, and so forth have we ever discovered a structure that could not have served another purpose if it was minus or added different particular components. That answers your question, I assume?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else got a question?
I think EV Research is typing his.
Okay. Probably going to be a big question. Oh my goodness. EV, are you in the chat room? It doesn't show that you're in the voice chat.
There it is.
Oh yeah, his name's
It's for
Raven.
Socrates.
Okay, you say we can't accept dogs for this argument, yet the biggest issue most creationists have with evolution is that it can't be replicated in a lab. Is that not exactly what dog breeding or even Darwin's pigeons does? Recreates an extreme alteration in animals via controlled experiments? That's for you, Socrates.
No, I don't feel like it's any way supportive of evolution, because it's not a change in who they are as a species. They're still dogs.
Nor would that ever happen. Well, we change in species? I gave you 9 examples of a change in species earlier.
They're the same species, but they're all.
No, they're not. Calypterate flies and houseflies are not the same species.
I'm not talking about that, but I'm answering this guy's question about the dog breeding. And that is a good point you bring out about how it's never been recreated in a lab, and I think that's another note that should be added.
It has been recreated in the lab.
What has?
Speciation. Do I need to run down to the list again? Here, hold on. Let me go back to my list. We have hawthorn flies, 3-spined sticklebacks, cichlid fishes in Lake Nagubagu, Tennessee cave salamanders, greenish warblers.
What about them? What about them? What about them?
We have recreated speciation with those animals.
What is speciation? What? Tell me.
Divergence in species, variation at or above species level.
Divergence in species?
Yes.
Break it down for me, bud.
How can I break it down any further than that?
Divergence in species. What is it?
Yes, it's a species of animal that diverges into one or more different species.
You're saying that in a lab they've watched a house.
Not just in the lab, but in the field as well, out in nature.
Okay. I'll have to look into that.
You want the sources?
Yeah, go ahead and send those to me. Those ones I do care about.
Okay.
Next question.
There you go. You can go ahead and unmute yourself, CT. If you want to ask him a question or me a question.
Um, can you hear me?
Yep.
So, okay, I think this question would be more directed towards OhMan, but it's more of an opinion question, not really like attacking anybody's
Okay.
view. But I think both of you can answer it. But would you consider different races of people to be a form of evolution, like African Americans versus Spanish versus Asian?
Yeah. Because any change in our genetic structure would be a form of evolutionary change. Now, it's not as significant as the difference between a Doberman and a Chihuahua, but it's there. Eye color would be an example of change as well.
There's a lot of recent findings that the early human Russians are a different off branch, supposedly, of other Europeans, and I feel like, yeah, there's different. They are different branches of humans that were created at the same time.
Okay.
Not resulting of same.
I have a
original
question.
people.
I have a question.
Sure.
Can you answer the phylogeny challenge?
You would have to tell me what that is.
Okay. I'm going to try and make this as simple as possible. In phylogenetics, we see that all animals are related to one another. Can you provide for me an animal that you can distinguish exclusively that is not related to any other animal?
Yeah, zebra is in no way related to a crocodile.
No, but it's related to horses, donkeys, mules, camels.
Yeah. I'm not saying there's one species that like.
Okay, that would be a requisite of a created kind.
Similar DNA. I'm saying that whoever created this had branches, the original species, and he branched off of them. But I'm not saying that they evolved.
Okay, where's the master species? Give me the master species.
The master species. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, the ultimate. Where's the proto species? Pick a clade, pick a species, whatever. Find me where you can point to the master species that all of its derivatives derived from, right? Like for example, cats. Right? Which feline derived all of the other felines, including leopards, hyenas, mongoose, civets, ocelots, savanna cats, domestic cats, tigers, leopards, panthers?
Well,
Where's that proto kitty? Where's he at?
well,
Exactly, you don't know.
gone.
It doesn't exist. Because there is no specific created kind. All felines are derivative of carnivore, which are derivative when their master ancestor would be nymphorid, but nymphorids come from what are they called?
But,
Cynodonts? Cynodonts?
Is like you're asking me to ask a question.
I'm asking you to answer this challenge. The challenge that no creationist has ever been able to do.
Of all cats. And you're just expecting me to, of course I know that off the top of my.
Well, why wouldn't you?
No, I don't.
If cats are a created kind.
I don't fucking spend my spare time memorizing all the origins of every single species.
Neither do I.
I think they would. How I think they would originate. Because I have better things to do.
Okay, so let me get this straight. You have no interest in how phylogeny works, and yet you think that the overwhelmingly supported exponent model for how phylogeny works is false because it disagrees with your worldview?
I never said anything about religion or my worldview. I said I don't believe that evolution should be considered fact.
Well, I've demonstrated overwhelmingly that it is. What's a fact? What's a fact?
Demonstrated shit.
What is a fact? What is a fact? Like, what is the definition of a fact?
Water's wet.
What makes a something a fact?
Because you could analyze it. You could see, oh, yep, there it is. It's fucking, yep, it's wet. I could feel it. It's fucking wet.
So observation makes something a fact.
I saw that thing evolve from whatever the
which
And
we
I
have
can't
seen.
trust what these scientists are saying is actually the truth. I can't trust that these guys out there digging
Why
with
not?
the shovels or whatever the fuck. Because why would I? Why would I trust them?
Because they have expertise in the field. Do you trust your doctors
For
when they
what
tell you
reason?
that you're
For
sick?
what reason? Yeah, and I'm pretty sure I'd be able to tell if I was sick too.
Oh, really? So you think that you would be able to determine if you have a glioblastoma or a sarcoma?
I wouldn't be able to determine the specific sickness I have, but I think I would know if I had it.
Right. So you go to people who have expertise in the field to determine what your sickness is. So why would you not then go to people who have expertise in the field to determine how species diverge?
I don't agree with.
Why
I don't
not?
know how else to break it down with. Because it doesn't make sense to me. A lot of these species.
So you don't know,
evolve in
therefore it's
stupid
false.
ways. I'm not saying it's false. I'm just saying it shouldn't be considered an absolute fact. That's the only reason I came on this debate. Whether or not it's true, it's false. That's not why I'm here. I'm just saying it shouldn't be considered an absolute 100% fact.
But I've given the overwhelming preponderance of evidence to
No,
show that
you
it is a
haven't.
fact.
You've given me what science.
What evidence do you need? What evidence do you need?
I need to be shown proof. I need to see the bones. I need to be brought over there. I need to say, listen, this is how we came up with it. I don't want to fucking. Oh,
Which
well,
bones?
Trust me, we found
Archaeopteryx? Australopithecus afarensis?
any of them to prove their point. I don't want to read their findings. I want to see what they're talking about.
Have you ever been to the Smithsonian?
Yes, I have.
Well, then you've seen it.
But I was very young. Maybe I have to check it out again, but I'm pretty sure all that information that's on the Smithsonian is available to me online. And I'm pretty sure I spent a fair amount of time looking.
Yeah, it is online. All of the things you are asking for is directly available to you.
Yes, and I've done my fair share of research, and I've been looking into it for quite some time. It doesn't add up to me, bud.
Clearly you haven't, because you don't even know what the fuck evolution is.
Yes, I do know what evolution is. It's a series of adaptations that cause an animal to evolve into a different species, subspecies.
No.
Yes, it is.
No.
Yes.
Common descent with inherited genetic modification.
I don't know the exact fucking definition here. Let me write it down. I'll repeat it back to you and make me sound fucking educated real quick.
Common descent with inherited genetic modification is not what you were saying there. You were talking about speciation, which is a mechanism of evolution. You see, evolution is a broad model that contains multiple mechanisms. Speciation would be one, natural selection would be another, genetic drift would be another, population mechanics would be another. Right? There are multiple components to a scientific theory.
Absolute facts.
All of these things are facts.
They're how they think they work. They're how they think they work.
No, oh, really? Are you kidding me right now? If it is a scientific theory, it has to be a fact first. It cannot be a theory unless we have directly observed what we are talking about. The evidence must be overwhelming.
You have to directly observe what we're talking about? Okay, then directly
if you were to put any theory in science on trial,
observe it then, bud.
We have! I have given you multiple examples!
No, we have not.
What have we not observed? What is it that you think we haven't observed?
Little insects barely adapting. That's not evolving species.
Speciation has been observed. I gave you 9 fucking examples and the link.
Adaptations in a species that is not an evolving species.
Well, oh my god, what are you even asking for then?
I'm asking for fucking 100% undeniable proof that I could see, not that's written in some.
Your second chromosome.
Degree. Fucking the guy with the degree is like, oh, here, look what I found.
Your second chromosome.
That guy.
There's your undeniable proof, your second chromosome.
That doesn't mean shit to me, bud.
It's fused at the telomeres, which means that an ancestor, one of your ancestors, Socrates, one of your ancestors had 24 base pairs of chromosomes, which means that given all other taxonomic conditions and criterion that we possess, your ancestor was a great ape, which means you are a great ape.
No, it doesn't.
That's exactly what that means, unequivocally, and now you're just denying reality.
Okay, are we done with the question and answer and all this bullshit?
Oh yeah, the question and the Q&A ended when everybody stopped asking questions. I'll open up the chat now and everybody can pop in here. Let me in the recording.